I brought a Thanksgiving list. My tradition that I invented. I invented a tradition for Thanksgiving. Because we don't really do Thanksgiving. We don't do a lot of holidays in this house.
Yeah.
Just our family in general. And I was laughing at how around Christmas, everybody is going to be elsewhere and I'm going to be home alone. And I was like, what could I do that's like a tradition for Christmas that I could do with others or on my own at any point? And then I went to the bank, and the bank, I told the banker I was inventing a tradition. They're like, so what do you do for Thanksgiving? I'm like, nothing. And they're like, well, you got to invent one for that too. So I invented a Thanksgiving tradition. So it's kind of like based on that concept of gratitude and generosity and like, you know, what thanks is. But it actually kind of started with the kind of how the first picture, the oldest picture of you is also the newest picture of you, or the youngest picture of you. Like the oldest and youngest picture of you are the same thing, which is fun.
What do you mean?
Yeah, like the youngest picture of you is also the oldest picture of you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. True. It's just a funny thing. So I was thinking, I originally wrote the essence of the old wise self is a thing, or the essence of the past wise self, because I was thinking of the past ways that I was wise, but then I was like, it's also the oldest version of me is the youngest version, so I changed it, and then it's like old wise man. So I was just like, funny play on words. So I just like wrote that at the top of the page, and I was like, okay, what's a tradition that is thinking about the ways I used to be wise, or ways that my older self was wiser than I am, so I can start to reapply or learn to apply new things that my old wise self was not wise yet, and like different things like that. And then came up with a tradition, but then I realized it's just something I should do all the time. So I was like, maybe I should do this at every holiday. And then it's like, wait a minute, then it's not really a tradition anymore. And then it's like, okay, maybe I'll just do this like every moon cycle, once a month or something. So now it's just, I wrote down like 7 complicated points that are often multiple different points. And it was the most convoluted and complicated tradition ever. And it needs refining. I don't know what to do with it. But it's a thing now. And that's just something that I figured I'd do all the time. So I wrote that. But I wrote that on the weekend, and then what's funny is during this week there were a bunch of things that were coming up related to the things that I was writing. So it was just like, it just makes sense because it was so almost like the tradition worked, where I figured out all the things that are that I'm aligned with or trying to figure out still, almost, and then those things would come up. So won't go into a point yet, but you'll see, I guess, that how some of them are just like, I would say something, and then my boss would say something, or family people would say something, or some like a friend would say something, and it would directly line up with one of the things that I was thinking about. And if I didn't do the tradition, I would have just been like, that's just another comment I hear once every few weeks or something like that. But this time it was like, I just wrote that and considered it as something that I should look for and try to like do more of or something. And yeah.
Maybe your tradition should be coming up with a new tradition.
That's a good one too. And then, but when do we do it? Thanksgiving, or do we do it every holiday?
And then does it ever become a tradition because you only ever always create a new tradition?
Yeah.
And never repeat what the tradition. But technically, that would be a tradition because you'd always be doing the same thing. You'd just be doing a different thing that's the same.
And the end goal of something that is good enough to be considered a tradition is you want to be applying it all the time. So then your tradition just becomes way of life. And then
you decide, I don't need to do this tradition anymore. That's the mark of a good tradition, where you give up on doing it because you're like, I'm doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Why would I do it on one day only?
It's like what Bashar was saying of, you're just shifting yourself into the new world. You just shift yourself so far that way, and now it's like, then you end up in a place where you're like, well, I need to come up with something totally different than all the things I was coming up with and shifting into, because now I'm there. Now what? Yeah. So that's the thing we could go over. You can't look at that page because it has a bunch of, we do tabletop role playing, kind of like a D&D, and it's loaded with that stuff too. So he can't see it because he's a player in the game, and that page is loaded with that information.
Probably wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, if you can read it, it's hard to read. Maybe we could go into that, but anything else? Maybe just...
Yeah. I was just thinking about... I watched the Bashar... It wasn't a Bashar, but it was Daryl Inca interview today, and Bashar, who he channels, talks about following your highest excitement. And then I was just thinking about making a tradition, and like you had the idea to do it and you followed through on it and you notice synchronicities happening because of it. But then if you were to do if you have a tradition, then it's like you have to have the actually, like, people do it and they're like, well, I don't know why I'm doing it. It's just because it's a tradition.
Yeah.
But it's like to actually act on your highest excitement, you're doing something because you actually want to do it, and you know, does a traditional thing lose the synchronicity because it becomes something that you're just doing and you're actually not doing it for any purpose or any real.
It really is like, you know, you're saying the traditions eventually become the thing you do all the time. Now the thing you do all the time is the thing people call tradition. Like, my boss's wife got like the typical meal that you would get for Thanksgiving, and they were like, we don't even want this. Why did we do it? And I went to get like shopping with our mom, and our mom bought Halloween candy, and she's like, well, just, and I was like, you don't have to do this. And she's like, yeah, but this is the world we live in, we just have to do it. I'm like, no, this is like, so the tradition has become a thing that you just do all the time, and now that's just what people do all the time. And now people think tradition means just something you do all the time, and that tradition itself has no like actual purpose in it, or like the value of the tradition is gone, and now it's just for the sake of it.
Which another thing in that Bashar video was to do the things you would be doing in the earth or on the earth that you believe would be the best earth to be on. So if you believe the best earth wouldn't have people giving up chocolate to little kids on Halloween, then don't do it.
Yeah, it's like, this is the world we live in, so just deal with it. It's like, well, it is now for you.
Yeah.
like, yeah.